I wasn't going to miss an opportunity to do this twice.
Take two. Dang YouTube.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, welcome to this SHR Media special. This is not the Edge of Liberty, even though it is the Edge of Liberty. That music you may be hearing may be very Edge of Liberty-like, but it is not, in fact, the Edge of Liberty. Now, are we starting at a weird time, this whole 8:15 thing? And that answer is unequivocally yes. Yes, we are. And the reason we're doing that is because for whatever reason, YouTube failed miserably. It got a total of 8 views. I'm looking at the stats on it right now. And hopefully this works a second time. Now, because of that, you, the viewers, may have to tolerate a few things. Okay. The chat's going to YouTube. We're not getting the kickback on that. I see people starting to filter in. That's good.
And the feed's up and running.
You have to make a camera adjustment on where your mic is coming from.
Oh, not again.
So we apologize for that, ladies and gentlemen. It's so weird when it does this because it did it to me last night, did it to me again tonight. And YouTube's been wonderful to us lately. So it's really, really hard. It's really, really hard to be mad at YouTube in general.
Yeah, but they've had issues on a lot of things lately because when on our data page, if you notice, there's a little section on the top right, and they've had a lot of warnings that there's errors with this, errors with that. Yeah. I've tried to go watch videos, and it's like, you can't watch this video. I refresh, and the video pops up, and it's just, I think some changes, but I mean, X has been acting weird, Facebook, YouTube, everything's been acting funky lately.
Well, and it looks like right now everything's back to normal. Yeah. So let's start that again. So normally on a Tuesday night at 8 p.m. Pacific time right here on the SHR Media Network, there's a large man with a beard, large, with a beard who is sitting here.
He's not in charge.
Bloviating normally and opining about the stories of the week. And he is off this evening. And now you are stuck with Jersey Joe and I, potentially, Mission Ready Men, Biggie might join us too if he sees the link. Joe, I know we were talking about before we had to restart everything because YouTube decided to kick us right in the gonads. We started talking about all the stories we're talking about this week, and we got into Signal Chat. And well, in Minnesota and Minneapolis,
and Data Republican.
Yes. So obviously Cam Higbee is just releasing more and more. And I saw a few today as I was scrolling through because this is one of those things we knew, and we've talked about this on all of our shows. We knew that there was a level of coordination, right? We knew that there was some sort of funding. And then all of a sudden, this starts coming out. And the level of it is unfreaking believable. Let's talk a little bit about Signal Chat before we get into Data Republican, because I think it's definitely worth talking about.
But I also, let me make up my one point that I did early. Actually, a two-parter, if you don't mind.
Yeah, go ahead.
One, to show how serious this is, look how quick Tim Walz folded and back down to Trump to get everything to drop. Within hours of all this getting exposed, he went, as you said, uncle.
Yeah, 100% uncle.
Yeah, so
all of a sudden,
point I'll save when we talk about Data Republican. But I mean, the Signal Chat and Data Republican, because they, from what I understand, have been working kind of in conjunction with each other. And
well, and I think what happened is, I think you saw once the information, a lot of those. Look, I said this earlier. We're not tech guys. You and I aren't tech guys. We're not good at that stuff. But once they got their teeth into what was going on, and once they started to, it's like any other investigation. Once you have that little thread, you start pulling on it. So Cam Higbee starts throwing it. Of course, so many people on the left were so mad. But if you're reading what's coming out, what they're putting in these chat rooms, I mean, there's been a couple posts into those chat rooms where they're talking about fleeing the country because the chat was leaked and that single chat was compromised. And yeah, there are some people who will stay,
Yes.
obviously.
Well, not just that, they got lawyers now that are in chat giving advice of
Yeah. Right. So it's amazing to me if you're that this shows a little bit of they know they were doing something wrong. They know what they were doing. Look, you're capturing license plates, which look, license plates are public. They're on a public road. You can absolutely do that. But when you're collecting them for nefarious purposes, that's called evidence. And you know that. And when you have, I said this on my show last night. When I worked for a police department a long time ago, we were a decent sized police department. We were fairly busy. We didn't have that level of coordination that they're having in this signal chat. They had it broken down into zones. They had people asking for backup. They had this, they had that. It was absolutely insane. And I mean, it's crazy to me when they say, oh, this is just people protesting. This is just people protesting. This is not people just protesting. This is a coordinated effort that crosses from protesting because they're engaging them to actively interrupt law enforcement. By the way, I'll say this 1,000 times and I'll say it again. Congress approved our immigration laws. Congress also approved ICE. If the state and the county and city jails and these sanctuary cities would just do what they're supposed to do, which is act on detainers that are put out and notify ICE to come get people, we wouldn't be in the problem that we're in.
Yeah.
Because
And I love the well, why isn't this happening in red states?
because red states are cooperating.
Yes. Texas is one of the has the largest deportation and capture going on. Florida's right there with them, but we're working with them. We're turning them over. So there's no issue.
Yeah.
Our police are working with them.
Yep. And they don't like that, which is just hysterical to me. And, I've said this a million times. If you want to protest, you want to get your friends signs, you want to write letters to the government telling them that you're angry, you want to stand in front of the government offices with your signs telling them that you're angry, you have the right to do that all day long. But when you are actively trying to stop law enforcement, that is no longer protesting. That is actually violations under 18 USC, right? You start getting into all the different ones that it can be. The Democrats have done their typical job of trying to break down the legitimacy of ICE, both emotionally and they lie about them literally. Oh,
Yeah.
they're not cops. They don't have the same authority as other federal agencies. This, that, and the other thing. No. Baseline, they have the exact same authority as any other federal agency. That's factual. That's not me saying I think they should. No. That's fucking factual. That's a real life situation.
And they don't have enough training.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
I know. Well, it's anything now, right? That's what they're going to do. They're going to do anything now, every little hiccup, which is absolutely hysterical to me because they're complaining about the training that ICE is getting, but they were all for all the illegals who are going through police academies.
Yep.
Right? You can't constitutionally carry a gun. Put it through the police academy. Oh, they're just trying to serve their community. Great. Do it the right way.
Mm-hmm.
The argument of, well, once they get here, there's no way for them to do it the legal way. Okay, they made that choice. Unfortunately, they made that choice. Do I think that they were trying to come for a better life? I absolutely sure. I have no problem with that. I said last night, and I'll say it again. I don't think every single person that crossed our border illegally is a bad person at their heart. That's all well and good, but this is what
Not everybody that robs a bank is a bad person either.
Yeah, robs a store, whatever. But what it gets into is the Democrats have emotionally activated and hijacked. I mean, these leftists that you're seeing at these protests, so to speak, and these actions against ICE, they're like a sleeper cell, like a sleeper agent that gets activated emotionally, and then it's just stand up and like must do what the Democrats tell me, and then they robot their way out the door. I've never seen a group of people so emotionally triggered and so mentally dilapidated because there's no logic. I mean, you've been in our chat rooms, and as soon as the trolls start coming in, you know how that goes. Where it's
Yeah.
immediately orange man bad, ice sucks, orange man bad, ice sucks.
It's
That's
not, oh, I disagree with this policy and we should change this rule and
yes.
discuss that. It's attack. Oh, your beard sucks. You look fat.
But
That's not an argument. That's schoolyard child tactics.
And I totally get being frustrated. And I'd rather they just come in and say, you suck and leave, right? Or just come in and say, hey, you suck because you suck. Okay, that's fine. But when you're trying, and I see this a lot, not just in our chat, but I see this on the internet, I see this everywhere, of trying to legally justify their actions. Well, no, you have to understand this is tyranny because it's being tyrannical. Well, first of all, if you all got out of the way, then you would never interact with ICE or Border Patrol ever, because you're trying to protect illegals who flooded into this country. And as
It's not even just illegals that they're protecting, rapists and murderers that they're trying to arrest, and these people are protecting them.
Yes, you're 100% accurate.
Just a month ago or so, they're pedophiles are bad, and now they're protecting pedophiles.
Well, it's only the pedophiles that they don't like.
Yes.
And that's what gets me, I guess, really frustrated. Because like I said, there's no basis of their argument. They want to sit there and cherry pick points out of everything. I saw them complaining that ICE threw flashbangs. What was it, yesterday or Sunday? And the woman who picked it up lost some parts of her hand. And they're like, well, they shouldn't be throwing flashbangs. Like, no, you shouldn't be trying to hoard federal law enforcement officers.
Well, at first they tried saying that she was shot in her hand by a non-lethal, and that's what did the damage. Then it came out that she tried picking up the flashbang and throwing it back at him, and found out that flashbang beats rock, paper, scissors.
Flashbang does, in fact, beat rock, paper, scissors. But when we have these arguments, and I try so hard when I engage with people online of just saying, look, let's go back to the law. Let's go back what they're supposed to be doing. You want to protest, you can protest, but following them around and trying to stop them and harbor the fugitives that they're going after is not legal conduct. Therefore, you are not protected under the First Amendment.
No.
You're not protesting government. You're actively interfering with law enforcement. Oh, that makes you a bootlegger. No,
it
does not, actually, because the founders were very clear about immigration in their writing.
These the same people that said we have to wear masks, we have to listen to the government, put that mask on, damn it.
The Branch Covidians, the ones who are still driving around with the mask on.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, somebody else brought that up. They brought up the incident that happened Sunday, and I was like, and Bill Clinton chimed in. I'm like, dude, Bill Clinton.
Oh, Jesus.
Waco. Let's not just
little
shut up.
Eon.
Waco.
Wasn't it Eon?
Shut up. But yeah, so.
But it was Eon, the kid's name, wasn't it?
Oh, no, that's Ilian Gonzalez. That was the other thing that Janet Reno did. Yeah, no, people forget about that. But he also unleashed the ATF on the Branch Covidians in Waco, Texas, and they burned everything down and people died in there. And those were people who allegedly had protections and rights. And I don't remember Democrats going crazy. I don't remember everybody calling for impeachment, yada, yada, yada.
The other one I had talked about on my show.
I want to finish my point because we've gotten sidetracked twice.
Never.
Yeah. When the founders were very clear about immigration policies, and that we had to be secure about who we allow in and who we don't. They were very secure and clear about that in their writings. If you read the Articles of Confederation, if you go, I know I said Confederate, that's such a blah, blah, blah. If you read all the founding documents, they will actually tell you that. And then in the 60s, people forget that after World War II, mid-50s or so, we shut immigration down to barely a trickle, because we had such an influx after World War II that Congress said we have to let the country kind of settle, figure things out, let
people assimilate,
let everything catch up to the influx of population, because if we don't do that, we're going to be out over our skis and we won't be able to take care of these people. So we closed it down and we slowed it down. You move to modern day history, and the amount of people flooding over our southern border from all the last 5-6 presidents, I'll first to admit it needed to be chopped down entirely. The problem is you now had Congress who up until 8 years ago, maybe 12 now because of Obama, when Obama was in office, they were all for shutting the border down. They were all for strong immigration. They were all for making sure that we're deporting people. Barack Obama deported 3 million people in his tenure. 3 million, right? And nobody was complaining then. Chuck Schumer and all these other yahoos were out there talking about how we have to deport people. These people shouldn't be here, blah, blah, blah. We don't know who they are. We don't know where they're coming from. The post 9/11 era, where terrorism is running amok all throughout the country, you now have that interest to worry about. So Congress passed laws under Clinton, the current immigration laws that we have now, which, by the way, I don't see anyone putting a legitimate immigration bill up, a standalone immigration bill. Anytime they touch with immigration, border, all this other stuff, it's mashed in with 25 other things that are not germane to the conversation of border control and immigration. Go and do the research. I'm not lying to you. These are your politicians, Democrats included. And then they'll say, well, they didn't vote for the border bill. It's like, well, it wasn't even really a border bill.
No.
So to go back to like kind of round all of that out, when the founders say we need to do this, in our history, we've been doing this to protect our country. And when Biden decided to let 11 to 14, some say higher, as soon as I went over 14, I had somebody say, I said 15 the other day in a conversation, and somebody responded, no, all estimates are 11 to 14. How dare you lie? I'm like, okay, I was off by 1 million. Okay, you got me. The other 11 to 14 is still a huge fucking number, my friend. Like, I can't believe that's your defense. You just admitted, like, oh, you know, the number is wrong, but the amount of people aren't really that big of a deal. So Biden lets them all in, and the country was rightfully pissed because we have people in this country that can't get a job. We have people who waiting too long in hospitals, schools, public services that are overrun, all of these other issues. Yes, there's talk about sometimes they're stealing other people's ID and potentially voting in elections. That's a problem. We have a million other problems. Trump came up and said, hey, you know what? Mass deportations. And the country said, you son of a bitch, I'm in, and voted him in. So, and then all of a sudden they're shocked. And I told you this before, Joe, this isn't a shock. We've all talked about this. As much as they want to turn around and say that these leftist politicians, and if you believe this, then you really need to go back down into mom's basement and have a good long think about what you're doing if you're protesting these ICE protests. If you think these politicians give a frog's fat ass about those illegals, you're out of your fucking mind. Because just months ago, they were talking about how we needed them to pluck fruit at a slave's wage. Nancy Pelosi, who's going to pick your vegetables? Oh, okay. So slavery's back? Is that what you're saying?
Who's going to mow my lawn?
Right. No,
I've heard those from Democrats.
And you know what? If a business is employing them at a slave wage, they should be shut down.
Yeah.
Right. I believe in all of that. Well, your cost.
Don't we have immigration specifically for
we do
people to come in and harvest?
We have agricultural migrant visas that we give out and have been giving out by and large,
which would make them legal and covered under the law and fair wages and protection.
And we would know who they are. Well, they're separating people. Well, why are you bringing your kid illegally over the border 3 countries away when you know what their laws are? You know what the rules are.
And we separate families every fucking day. We separate families every day. When we arrest drunk drivers, when we arrest murderers, bank robbers,
domestic violence calls.
Yes, we separate them every fucking day. So that's just tugging at the heartstring of weak-minded people.
I've made a ton of arrests where unfortunately the child had to be taken away from the parent because the parent was unable to care for that child. And it would be a risk to leave that child with that parent. So they get separated. Yes. That's the reality. But here's the thing. All those people that I was arresting, for the most part, the ones that weren't actually the detainers activated and they were picked up at county jail, were legal citizens, right? These people are illegal citizens. And that doesn't make them bad people, but you have to get out of this emotion of they're just trying to find a better life. Yeah, well, so aren't robbers when they're trying to go in and steal shit. They're trying to get a better life too.
You just took the word that right out of my mouth about it.
That doesn't make it okay. And when you lose borders, and look at Europe and look at what WEF and all these other fucking assholes want, when you start to lose your borders and you lose your sovereignty at your borders, you start to lose your nation, because the public services, the government, everything cannot keep up with this influx of people. 11 to I love how the number 11 to 14 million does not blow people away when you look at the population ratio of this country, how big of a ratio that is. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You dump 500,000 people into a city, right? And watch what that does. Even a city like LA, New York, you drop 20, 30, 40,000 in overnight. You watch what that does to its services. Okay. So if you're sitting there like, oh, but the government really, the Democrats love these people and the progressives, they don't. They want to fundraise off of them.
They want to get more elected Democrats.
Well, exactly, because they redistrict, and when you redistrict, the bigger cities are where a majority of the immigrants go, and then they redistrict based off the numbers that are put out by the census, not who's legal and who's not legal. The census, they just count people in a house and move on, and that's how district seats are done in Congress.
1 little, 2 little, 3 little Indians.
Exactly. I don't think you're allowed to say that anymore. Are we allowed to sing that anymore? And then it's also fundraising. These incidents that are making the news, these videos, look, the guy who was shot Sunday, there was a Act Blue text blast that went out 2 hours later to fundraise. That's their whole goal with these incidents. That's why they want conflict. They don't give a shit about you. And you know what? My side of the aisle, look, conservatives don't necessarily give a shit about me as an individual, but what they want is for me to be able to live my life by and large. Democrats don't want that. Liberal.
Well, let's also go back to that gentleman, because one of the things I heard today that kind of tweaked my shorts. He was law-abiding. He wasn't doing anything wrong. He assaulted somebody prior.
Well, and
that's why the cops got involved.
There's also a report that last week,
yep,
he was involved in an incident in which he got hurt in the ribs with ice.
Yeah.
Right. So, I mean, look, if you want to turn around and say, hey, this guy was actively working with the Get Out of Minnesota ICE chapter, and we're proud of him because of that. And, you know, at least be honest about who he was. Like, if you're going to do this, own this. Because when you start saying, like, you have all of these bad actions and then something happens and then all of a sudden you turn him into this martyr. Well, he was just a nurse at the VA. Okay. Plenty of good. Look.
Lincoln Riley was in school to be a nurse.
Yeah. Lincoln Riley was a nurse. I mean, I'll turn it around too. Ted Kaczynski was a math genius at Harvard. That doesn't mean that he wasn't blowing people up with letter bombs.
Yeah.
If you are wondering who Ted Kaczynski is and you don't remember who Ted Kaczynski is, it is time for you to do your homework and go to bed. So then we get to Signalgate. And everything that came out with Signalgate was absolutely, it just shows a massive amount of coordination. And that alone speaks volumes to, don't be sorry, speaks volumes to what's going on behind the scenes. And it's out there for everybody to see. Like, they're not hiding it. Like you said, Cam Higbee is not holding back or saying, you have to log into this to see this information, blah, 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 blah. No, he has really been putting it out there for information. And the amount of people who cannot look at that information and digest what it is and say, holy shit, maybe this is a little bit of an insurgency, because they're plotting against government agencies to keep people who are here illegally, insurgents on some level, to keep them here and disrupt the country and go against our laws. So it's just, it's insane. So you see all that, and then Data Republican comes out, which was the point, 15 minutes ago that we were trying to get to before I went on a rant. So Data Republican comes out, and she starts getting information about Chuffed. Chuffed is this Australian-owned crowdsourcing fundraising website part of the reason why they picked one in Australia is because the US government has very little oversight out of the information that we're getting out of there. So they picked Chuffed, and like you pointed out earlier, the first person to sign up when it has to do with supporting American immigration, Canadian. Now Chuffed has raised almost $750,000 or over $750,000 at this point. In the last week and a half before this Sunday, correction. I'll correct myself. In all of January, $180,000 has been raised to fund this insurgency action that's going on in Minneapolis. It is an insurgency. I will say it, and I will keep saying it. It is an insurgency. You're trying to go against the laws of America. You're trying to go against the people of America, or whether you like it or not, that's a reality. So they go to Chuffed. Now, like I said, the government can't issue subpoenas to Chuff. They can't use any KYC rules, any of that stuff. You know anything about banking, you know what I just said. And as a foreign entity, they don't have to worry about American liability laws, lawsuits from people who, I don't know, get their finger bit off. So then we start going through the donor list, and Data Republican pulled all of this from Chuff because she's an awesome nerd like that, and I am not that intelligent, and I will be the first to admit I can't do stuff like that. And she gave this whole spreadsheet on Proton. The link was there for the public, for everybody to see. She's not hiding her work, not hiding her information. And you start seeing names, and we did some, you can go to shrmedia.com. I have the entire list at the bottom of my article that I wrote on Sunday or yesterday. It's 78 pages, the spreadsheet is, and all the money to Tending the Soil, which is the 501c3 that maybe shouldn't be a 501c3 in Minneapolis, that's building a $22 million building right now, in which you have 5 nonprofits that are all benefiting from. And none of them have anything to do with being, including unions, none of them are doing anything except they call themselves Tending the Soil, which it's really funny. And I said this last night. It's really funny that they use the name Tending the Soil, because tending the soil means to cultivate and take care of. And they're doing the exact opposite of that, because the soil should be the country, and it's not. It's the illegals to them. And you start looking through and you're like, wow, there's a ton of people. There's a ton of unnamed people that are anonymous. And then you have other people like the Honorable Heidi Schultz. Who's Heidi Schultz? She's a sitting district court judge in Minnesota. She is a judge in Minnesota that's funding this group. By the way, this group isn't shy about who they are.
No.
What's her last name? Cole?
Well, I think they never thought this list was going to get out, and they were good because they can hide behind, it can't be subpoenaed, so we have nothing to fear.
And
well, but I'm sorry, when foreigners are paying money to try to overthrow our government policies, that is not protesting. That is insurrection. That's treasonous.
Yeah, it's an insurgency.
Yeah,
is what it is. It's a paid insurgency. It's its own form of terrorism. When you're protecting non-Americans from deportation and you're fighting with the American government, the American rule of law, the American way of life, all of that stuff, you're using violence, which they have several times, throwing rocks at cops and all this other stuff, and you're using that, or the threat of violence surrounding a group of ICE agents that are trying to do something is a threat of violence. When you're yelling, we're going to kill you, down with ICE, fuck ICE, all this other shit, to change political discourse in the country, of political ideas, which is what they're trying to do. They're trying to say, no, you need to let the 11 to 14 million illegals change. That is the definition of terrorism, using force of fear to change people's opinions about politics. So, Data Republican, like I said, you have foreign entities. You have this MP, member of Parliament out of the UK, Patricia Snyder. You have a Canadian school member, Christian Schneider, Sarah Hopewell, who's a UK city councillor, district councillor, Benoit Roux, who is a secretary for the French Communist Party. That's somebody we want. And then you look at the American side of this list. Like I said, I already mentioned the judge, Senator Mary Kunesh. Who's Senator Mary Kunesh? She's the assistant majority leader of the Minnesota Senate, actively. Rachel Abbey Miller, who's an attorney out of the Texas AG's office. Kelly Mitchell is on that list. She's the assistant commissioner of the Minnesota Department of Corrections. You should not, when you are collecting, just if you're collecting a taxpayer paycheck for your job, you probably shouldn't be using your own name. You may want to go to your husband and be like, hey, will you donate this under your name so I at least have some level of deniability? And they're not even smart. They're not even smart enough to do that. That's how jacked up they are. And that's how just wrapped up into all of this. And then out of the signal chats, and I'm going to put this up really quick because I meant to show this last night and I didn't. This is the workflow of the signal chat. You have a command and control apparatus. You have dispatch hubs. You have specialized field units, plate checkers, specialized field units, observers. You have specialized field units going on.
Now, isn't this being linked to Antifa? But I thought they weren't organized.
Antifa's not a real thing.
I know they're not organized,
except for when they are.
Yes,
and it's really funny to me because
and the mafia is not real.
This conversation, I seem to recall there was a group in the 30s in Germany who were trying to incite violence against the standing government and overtake the government through political lies and picking on specific groups of people and getting everyone to rally and mad on them so they get elected into office and then they can overthrow the government that's in there. I'm just saying, you do the research on who that might have been. They wore brown shirts.
But also, wasn't it there's no mafia?
There was also no mafia for a long time in America, just like
there's no such thing as the mafia.
You just don't talk about it, right? That's the way to get by it. You don't talk about it, Joe. Yeah. So you're going through all of this stuff in Signal Chat, and then this woman pops up, and I'm going to tell you a little bit about her. Her name is Amanda Noel Kohler, and that's Amanda Noel Kohler right there. Amanda Noel Kohler is a political strategist and a farm owner, and she's also a registered lobbyist with the state. She describes herself as an advocate, strategist, organizer, and coalition builder. And she owns a farm. I forget what it's called. It's called Maple Urban Farm in St. Paul. But she also owned a little website called amandakohler.com. And do you know what that is? That is a political consulting firm in Minnesota who has allegedly consulted with many big Democrats in Minnesota. So she's not just some random anarchist screwball lunatic farm owner. No, she's a operative, right? And then when all of this started to come out, and she's all over social media, she's pushing for Tending the Soil, a group called Monarch. She's pushing all the training on how to unarrest people and the anti-ICE training that they were doing. She's doing all of that until her name got leaked in these. Oh, by the way, she was also a candidate for office in Minnesota. And then once her name got leaked, all of a sudden she scrubbed. Her website got shut down or is set to private. You can't publicly access it. Her Instagram was immediately deleted. Her LinkedIn was scrubbed. She completely started to erase her presence on the internet. Why? Because the internet is forever. I'm old. First one to admit this, Joe. You're old. First one to admit it.
Back in my day,
we kind of watched people learn the hard way that the internet's forever, right?
Mm-hmm.
When they started saying things, and then all of a sudden 3 hours later, you could pull it up on YouTube or E-Bombs World or all the other ones that I'm going to list that have been probably shut down for 20 something years. These young folks who are doing all of this, and I say young folks, she's probably in her late 20s, early 30s, whatever, should know better. You show the world your ass and you're going to get a piece bitten out of it. And the other thing that was really funny that Kim Higbee released earlier today was two of the Signal Chat group's entire email list, because they were using, or one of the apps, I should say, because one of the anti-ICE apps that they made and put on Android or Apple, I can't remember which one, was apparently written so poorly and weakly that they were able to easily find all of the active users of it via their email address.
One of the things I find funny is people are screaming, they're doxing, but they had no problem doxing federal law enforcement officers. In fact, they bragged about doxing federal law enforcement. Now that they're getting exposed, now they have a problem with it.
Yeah, it's funny how doxing only works one way for them. But that's what we see a lot with the Democrats, right? Everything's always one way.
Oh, yeah.
And I say it all the time. If you watch this current communist push amongst the progressive left, and that's what it is. You can call socialist, you can call it communist. It's all the same thing. One's just a little more vicious than the other one. Marxism, Fabianism, all that stuff. I know what all of it is. I know what all of it does. I understand all of it. This is exactly the push that they would do. And this is exactly, you go back to the Bolshevik Revolution, right? And they were blaming the government for everything. They were making the government the bad guys, not the problems. The same thing that the Nazis did, the old Weimar Republic in the 30s, right? In Germany. And then what they would do is they get people emotionally attached, emotionally outraged. They would put logic aside. Logic meant nothing, to the point that they were running around and smashing windows and making people wear armbands, right? The illegals here should not be here. So I don't want to hear tyranny when we're trying to remove people. That would be like saying you're tyrannous because somebody did a home invasion on your house and they refused and you want them gone. You're now some sort of tyrannical dictator. No, it's your house. It has walls for a reason. It has doors for a reason. We have laws for a reason. We are a nation of laws. The founders were explicit in their writings about that. Not anarchy. They don't want anarchy. They had a king who would not represent the American rights, or would not represent the rights of the Americans that were over here living in the country. But they had laws. The founders, if you read anything about the founders or even try to read anything about the founders, laws were a big deal in that they'd have, and it doesn't matter if you like laws or if you don't like laws. There's a bunch of laws out there I'm not a big fan of, but they're out there and I follow them because until we elect people to change them, which is our way of government, then there's not changing them. We have a process to change them. You want to change immigration? Great. Go for it. You get somebody up there to present a bill that gets passed by Congress and signed by a president, like the current rules are for immigration, and we'll have that conversation. And if I don't like it, I don't like it. But I'll tell you right now, I understand how our system works. Not always a fan with how it turns out. We have Obamacare where you're mandated to buy something that's all set out through state governments, right? Healthcare, right? You have to go through the state exchanges if you don't get it through work. Obamacare, we found out huge government program that everybody wanted. The whole left wanted. We're going to be just like Canada, except Canada pays like 65% taxes and they still don't get really good service. And you go talk to Canadians and they'll tell you that, not the progressive who are trying to do everything left. I mean, real honest Canadians.
Over 6 months to get a fucking MRI.
Yeah. And then you look at Obamacare here and how much it's costing us. And even the last shutdown, they didn't want to fix Obamacare, the Democrats, when they shut down the government. They didn't want to fix Obamacare. They just wanted to keep throwing good money after bad, because that's what the Democrats do. They have a bad idea and they stick to it and they keep
It's not their money.
And then they start blaming everybody else for saying, hey, something's wrong here. We got to fix this. What are you, a homophobe, an Islamophobe? What do you want, people to lose their healthcare coverage? You're a monster. You're a murderer. It's like, no, it's just we're $38.5 trillion in debt. And we have to start making better fucking choices. That's just where we are as a country, whether you like it or not. And not every president has been fucking perfect. But you know what? The ones who are actually trying to lower that debt. So my great-great-grandkids are not saddled with debt from 5 years ago, 10 years ago, so they could potentially have a better life, doesn't make me a bad person that I give a shit about them. You people who want all these illegals that we're going to end up funding in schools, they pay more in taxes above, they were, up until you added 14 million of them. And all of a sudden, they can't legally work here. So how are they making money? Not the legal way, so they're not paying taxes on it.
Or they steal IDs. They get stolen IDs.
But that's okay. Old people deserve that because they're rich and they're in their house. There's no logical reason for it. And that's what drives me insane is it's strictly emotional.
Yep.
And that has been what these youth have been taught to be is outright emotional. I bring this up on my show, Joe. Once the hippies started taking over education in the late 70s and they got into academia and then they got into administrator positions and they started raising the next group of hippies where there's even more of them. We're now in the third, almost fourth iteration of that. And one of the things that they were pushing, everybody gets a trophy. So you win no matter what. As long as you show up, you win, right? Dumbing down of our education, Common Core system. There's a reason our country has plummeted in overall education in this country. And when you start speaking intelligently about the founders and our history and the intent and our laws, all the left does, because they can't counteract it, is have emotional breakdowns and piss their pants in mom's basement and just throw insults at you. You're just going to insult you over and over and over again. We're just going to insult you because my feelings are hurt and it feels really bad down in my no-nos. And mommy said I don't have to deal with that. And here we are as a nation, right? You have kids who they're teaching fucking remedial math for kids going to Harvard. Are we really sending the best and brightest to Harvard if they're teaching remedial math?
Our education has gone down the toilet since the creation of the Department of Education.
Yeah, in the 70s.
The numbers even back it up. We used to be number one in education, and now we're so far down the fucking pole, it ain't funny.
Joe, we have states where they've removed all of the requirements to graduate, all the actual like testing requirements. What was it? The girl who's suing the Baltimore school system because she got to college and realized she couldn't read, but they graduated her. Right? Everything. And you know, BZ says this all the time, and he's 100% right. Wish you well, BZ. Can't wait to see you Thursday. Everything the Democrats touch turns to shit. Look at Seattle, and you look at Oregon when they passed the, all drugs all the time act or whatever it was called, where you can do drugs. And look, they had to change direction on that and be like, oh, this is an absolute shitty idea. We all said it was going to be a shitty idea. We all said you're going to just let people do as much drugs as possible. That's going to destroy shit. No, it's going to be fine. And that destroyed shit. And it's funny. The same people are like, well, everyone has to have Obamacare and you have to follow all these fitness and health standards and blah, 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 because if you don't, you're going to cost more money. But they're just going to let drugs and drug fucking users and fentanyl flow over our fucking borders.
Yep.
And put all those people into the hospitals on
what's happened since Trump closed the border? Fentanyl overdoses have dropped like a fucking stone. And amazingly, our murder rate's gone down. Now that he's enforcing laws, our border's secure. Holy shit. It's amazing how things change when we start just following the fucking laws instead of, just willy-nilly doing whatever the hell we want.
Yeah, when you've stopped the illegal border crossings by almost 99.5%, and then all of a sudden we have positive increases, like, I don't know, 100,000 people a year not overdosing on fentanyl. I call that
economically housing going down, rent going down. And yes, I know there's still some blue states that are overtaxing everything, and it still costs a lot. Well, that's your local government you voted for.
Yeah. No, I mean, look at California. Look, the state I live in is a fucking shit show. I keep voting to change it, but there's not enough people because the rich people here. And look, we know how politics works. Daniel talked to us about it last night. A lot of people don't realize that when politicians are running for office, in order to get donations and backing and support from these PACs, they have to sign these contracts that hold them personally liable, say, I will do these things or I won't do these things as a representative or whatever. But yeah, you look at the state of California and you look at, we should have the fourth largest economy and we're about to be in a massive deficit. Why? Because Newsom spent all this fucking money and the state's worse. Everything's more expensive. We have less fuel. We have more expensive fuel. Housing's the most expensive in the nation. And you influxed how many people with the border crossings? That's going to be even less available housing, which makes it even more expensive. Food's going to be more expensive. Everything's going to be more expensive. That's just a reality. But the Democrats in this state are like, no, that's fine because the majority of us work in six-figure jobs, so we're just going to keep voting for the same thing, because we love the fact that pedophiles cannot be sex offenders and charged with misdemeanors. That's awesome for us. Yeah, I'm paraphrasing. I'm being kind of a dick, but that's the reality. Like, they're not voting. And then you go to other states like your state, Arkansas. Sorry, Arkansas. I pronounced it wrong. Some of these other states where it's less expensive to live, just less taxation, more reasonable taxation. Like, I have no problem paying taxes, but in California, I pay taxes 4 times on the same dollar every single fucking day. So it blows my mind that the interest of Democrats is anybody but American taxpayers and citizens.
Tell you what, why don't we play that new little video?
Oh, yeah.
Give a little break, and then we're going to jump on subjects because we've been hammering this pretty much the whole show.
Whatever do you mean?
I don't know. But we have a new little video to premiere. We premiered it when we had the glitch.
Yeah, the glitch kind of unglitched us.
Yes.
So first and foremost, SHR Media, we just launched. We're in a partnership with Seven Armors. Go to sevenarmors.com. Check them out. We just launched a little store. Nothing crazy, nothing too big, but in it,
you're a mom and pop store.
Yeah, just a little mom and pop store, something to keep the lights on for us. So if you absolutely enjoy what we're talking about, not 80% of the chatters, but if everybody else is enjoying what we're talking about, please go to shrmedia.com. You can find a link to the shop and see everything else here. And here's the information. See, that wasn't too hard, was it? God, Joe, you're up. This is your subject.
All right, yes, we're going to go on to, and the title of the article was When White Coats Become a Weapon. And what's happening lately is people's emotions are totally overtaking them. And now we have medical professionals. Not only some are trying to refuse to treat Republicans, ICE, conservatives. They're now going online and giving out advice on how to medically mess with ICE people and other conservatives. And that's, to me, that's stepping over the line. I spent 20 years in the medical field. Mm-hmm. I've had to deal with people that I despise. For example, I had a gentleman in a prison, had to carry him down 3 flights of stairs because the elevator was out, 300 and some pounds. He had raped and molested a 12-year-old boy and a 13-year-old girl. And their crime was he was homeless. It was cold. They brought him a blanket. Now, in the back of my mind, I would have loved to have dropped him down every single stair in that 3 flights.
Understood. I think that's a pretty
But professionally, I had to give him the same level of care that I would give everybody else. I've dealt with gangbangers, murderers, people who beat their wives, and I had to sit there with a smile on my face and give them the best treatment and equal treatment. And I did that for 20 plus years with a smile on my face because I had to. That's part of the business. But now you got medical personnel that are involving politics into their treatment. And that is going to hurt the medical field because the trust. How can I trust going and having a procedure done, knowing that if my provider or any of the medical personnel don't like my politics, will now put my life at risk?
Yeah, if you walk in wearing the wrong shirt.
It has totally gone from, rhetoric to endangering Americans' lives. I don't care. When I was on the ambulance, I didn't care whether you were blue or red. I didn't give a shit. As I said, I've dealt with gangbangers getting shot, and I gave them the same treatment. Now, when we got back to the building, we may have had a few words between ourselves to vent out our frustrations. But on the rig, it was professionalism. And these medical personnel that are doing this, honestly, they should have their licenses revoked. They can't be trusted with a medical license. And you had an anesthesiologist here in Florida who said that he would refuse to treat any conservatives. You had a nurse here in Florida who went on TikTok and said how to dose ICE's food from laxatives to sedatives. It's happening, and it's not the first time this has happened. We've had medical personnel. You had one recently, a labor and delivery nurse, wishing nothing but bad stuff to happen for Caroline and her pregnancy.
Yeah. And that used to be the line. I mean, there used to be so many things in this country that we did not cross the line and go at other citizens for. Like, you could disagree with a lot of stuff, but we never wished ill upon you. And now I saw that nurse, and she's been fired. She went on TikTok to complain, which, good on her hospital group for getting rid of her. I hope she gets a level 4 tear and blah, 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 and this, that. Why would you wish that on another citizen? Why would you, just because you don't like their politics? Like, but you brought up the emotional aspect of it, right? There's no logic left. It's all emotional response. It's like looking at a YouTube chat room. It's all an emotional response with nothing behind it other than outrage. And then you have a select few who are actually trying to have a conversation with you, which I respect them. I don't have to agree with you, but I can respect you. You have the right to your opinion when you're not screaming at me and you call me all these names first, and then you get to your point you're trying to make. Just get to the point you're trying to make. I didn't mean to hijack. Sorry.
No, it's perfectly fine. I'm just, it's going over the line, and it's illegal for him to do it, to try to treat. Agree. But you know what? It's illegal to murder. It's illegal to rob banks. And there's a lot of things that are legal. People will still do it.
Mm-hmm.
So there is recourse, but you see more and more people that are willing to step over that line in the medical field that wouldn't have done it before. A lot of people would not have jeopardized their career over political differences.
Mm-hmm. Do no harm. Wasn't that a thing in the medical field for the longest time? Do no harm.
Yeah.
And now it's, you can do harm as long as it's to whoever we agree with doing harm to. Which is funny because I think of all of the doctors and nurses and medical staff who you probably don't know their politics because they don't talk about it at work, or they certainly don't bring it out in public what they feel, or they don't coordinate the two and say, well, I'm a nurse and I think that you should do X, Y, and Z, who treat all of these illegals, Democrats, all the other ones, without saying a word about it, because that's their job. And they understand there's certain, back when I was working in law enforcement, we were told you leave certain things at the door. You just leave stuff at the door. It has nothing to do with what we're doing here. You leave stuff at the door, and you did.
Yeah.
And
you leave everything at the door. If it's not what you're doing, if it's not involved in your profession, you leave it at the door. You're not allowed to have bad days in the emergency fields. Mm-hmm. You got to have good days. You can't bring your home life into your job
or your other worries or your kid's sick or whatever. And, Joe, it's when I talked earlier about the dumbing down of our society and how the emotionally triggered have been told to just act on it all the time, no matter what. And your emotions are a good thing and you should just act out on it and have no self-control whatsoever. This is the exact sort of thing that I was talking about, because politically, we used to never know. I couldn't tell you half the guys that I worked with 15 years ago what their politics were, because we didn't talk about it. We didn't care. Everyone's politics were individual. Now it's so in your face, and it started in 2008. That's when that was the first time I had a random stranger in 2008 ask me who I was going to vote for. And at that point, I honestly hadn't made up my mind, and I had said that. It was like a year before the election, or maybe a little bit less. I wasn't even paying attention like I am now. I mean, I knew the founding documents, I knew the history, I know the Constitution, I knew all that stuff. I follow politics enough to be informed, but I didn't get involved like I am now. And that was one of the moments I started to get involved because somebody said, "Who are you voting for?" And I said, "I don't know." And the guy said to me, "If you don't want to vote for a black man, just admit that," because it was Obama. And I said, I don't know who I'm going to vote for. Like, I haven't made any decisions yet whatsoever. Obama had probably announced a month earlier. I didn't know anything about him because nobody knew anything about Obama that early on in his career because he was a one-term senator out of Illinois that nobody had ever heard of before. But that was the emotional trigger. And I was like, why are you yelling at me right now, man? I'm literally walking into a store, and it was a white guy. That was the best part about it. It was a white dude. And I'm like, dude, it's just, then that's when we started seeing the Democrats prey on emotions to get votes. And you see it every day now, more and more. There's no logic behind it. And that's the part that absolutely kills me. And they'll have an emotional argument and then like try to throw in one or two logical portions of it where it's like, well, my whole argument's like, no. You can use your emotions to bolster your logic, but don't use your emotions to drive your conversation and then throw in half a tidbit about something that is semi cherry picked and not real about what's going on.
That's
and
sort of
expect me to understand and respect you for it.
Before Obama, I was independent, but the day he got inaugurated, I sat on the back porch with my parents watching the inauguration, listening to his speech, and I was like, oh my God, this guy's going to do something with the country. And more as time went on, it started, you started to see the reality that he was a bullshit artist and the lies that were being portrayed. And I started paying attention more and started looking in and finding out the lies upon lies upon lies. But before that, I was an independent. I didn't pick a side.
Well, and it's funny too. And if you go back to that time, the Democrats, all these things that they say they want to pass on a regular basis and this, that, they had the House and Senate and the executive for 2 years. The first 2 years of his presidency, all we got was Obamacare, which we've seen what that's turned out. They absolutely could have changed immigration under Obama.
Yep.
They could have rammed that through and they would have been just fine. They could have changed our immigration policy. They could have changed who was funded, who wasn't funded, all this other stuff. They could have done all of those things. Chuck Schumer and all those fucking blowhards that come out and tell you now we have to make these changes only because, look, somebody brought up a great point the other day. How many riots do you remember the 4 years under Biden?
None.
It wasn't until Trump announced again that people, all of a sudden, Antifa had money, right?
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, you started having these massive protests, right? And Trump still won. But my point is, the conservatives were not. Look, I thought Biden is legitimately going to go down as the worst president in the American history. I entirely do that because of all the things that he did that disregarded our Constitution, which as a president, and not just our Constitution, but our nation in general, right? The 11 to 14 million alone. I'm going to keep saying that number over and over again because it's such a massive influx of illegals into this country. Undocumented aliens, Sean. You can't say illegals.
Illegals.
Right? But Biden was
legal.
Biden was a disaster for this country. He did nothing but try to spend more money. Look, he fucked up Russia. Every time somebody talks about the Ukraine war, I always say, well, that was Biden.
Yeah.
Everybody, including the EU, told Biden, hey, Russia's going to invade. We need to do something before they do that. And he did absolutely nothing. Biden was a disaster. And outside, I know January 6th. Yeah. January 6th was a shit day. I've said that 100 times. But you know what's funny? On January 6th, there were people that walked into the lobby of Congress, old people, who got prosecuted for 5 years, just as much as anyone else. And then there's the Ashley Babbitt shooting, right? She was unarmed. There was a SWAT team 2 feet from her, just standing against the wall, chilling, watching the crowd. Right. And that idiot, when she shot her through the door. Right. And look, and I've said the whole time, it was absolutely tragic. It was absolutely horrible. She was not armed. There's a million different things you can go about. But remember, we were told to protest peacefully. Trump said that. Some people got out of control and they got arrested. Yeah. And for trespassing, essentially, is what it comes down to, right? Is federal trespassing. Yes, I thought it sucked that there was a couple of cops hurt, but I'm not a mono incident voter. And I am not this one thing happened, so everything else is terrible. Because if that was the case, right, Bill Clinton could have killed Osama bin Laden and we had 9/11. Right? So why would you ever vote Democrat again? Look at how many people died on 9/11. Like, you could just stretch that to everything. I cannot be happy about what happened on January 6th, but that doesn't mean I'm not going to be a conservative.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and that's what they want you to do. They get down to these single issues, and it's like, you're either for us or against us. Well, no, I can be for some things and against other things. Right? I've said a million times, that divisive idea of politics, of it's either all or nothing, is exactly why we are where we are as a country right now. Because it used to be that we could agree to disagree and still be friends and still not hate each other. But then, as I've said it before, since 2008, what happened is, you know, I grew up in Massachusetts. I was slightly right of center growing up at best. And then I moved out to California. When I moved out to California, I immediately turned into this uber super right winger because I'm like, look at the California politics. And every single time there was a push to the left and the Republicans would give up a little bit more and a little bit more. And I'm saying, what are we doing? What are we doing? This is making me angry. What's going to happen when
We always had to give up a little bit, even when we had the majority. You guys got to give up a little bit for us to do this.
They always want to negotiate more when they're not in power.
Yep.
You know, that's what the left does. But I said all the time, watching what happened in California and watching how fucked up the state was and what Democrats wanted to do. And look, I've said for years, California is the gross liberal petri dish of Democratic ideas. It's where they get all their nasty fungus little shit. They put it in a petri dish and watch it grow, and they see how it works in the state, and then they try to move it outside the state.
Shit, I know a hardcore liberal couple that fled from California and went to New Jersey for a better life.
Yeah, no, look, I say it all the time. If it wasn't for my kids, I wouldn't be here. That my kids are more important than my comfort, right? And they always will be. So I will stay here for as long as I need to for my children. And I have no issue with that. But California is an absolute fucking shit show.
I want to bring up another topic. I know we're going to get short on time.
Yeah, we got what, 15 to go?
Well, sort of. I mean, we're at an hour right now, but let's hit this one last topic and then we'll get going.
Okay.
Thursday, the Senate's going to run a test vote on the budget. Now, here's the thing that's going
to me.
But here's the thing that's going to throw a wrench into this whole Democrat plan of let's vote against the budget to try to screw over DHS and specifically ICE.
That's their excuse.
ICE is funded until 2029.
Mm-hmm.
That was done in the big, beautiful bill. So you can shut the government down. It's not going to affect SNAP. It's not going to affect military because the last shutdown, they were funded.
Well, and the continuing resolution funded all this shit.
Yeah. It's going to affect a small group, mostly federal government workers
who
vote Democrat. And it's not going to affect that much more. So they really don't have any stronghold. I know they're going to try to puff their chest up and think they have all the power. But I was proud of the Republicans last time. They did not back down like they normally do. They held strong. And you know what? I see them doing it again because it's going to show the Democrats are the ones that are going to shut the government down if they don't vote the budget through. And and what's going to happen also is Republicans worked with Democrats and gave up some stuff on that bill to get the Democrat support in the House. And now the Democrats are backing out of it.
Well, look, I thought you were going to keep going. No. You already had Fetterman say that he will not vote for this shutdown. He says he'll vote to keep the government open. You have other purple Democrats. See, the last shutdown, and you have to look at this like a politician, the last shutdown was kind of out of the margins of the midterms. This shutdown is now within the margins of midterms. Midterms are in November. We're at the end of January. This is the stuff that voters will have a tendency to remember one way or the other. I think that you will have the insurrection group of the progressive left try to shut down the government over just ridiculousness. By the way, congratulations to Congress, or at least the House, for passing the 12 appropriations bills that are required to actually pass a bill and not just ram through a ridiculous omnibus. That's impressive. But you now have this no need to try to shut down the government. Chuck Schumer's going to bow down because Chuck Schumer's he's looking to get in primary to New York. There's a chance that they're going to try to force Chuck Schumer out, and that I guarantee you AOC is sitting there drooling over his seat. And that state's batshit crazy enough to make her a senator, right?
Yeah.
So if Chuck goes, or Chuck would go if he doesn't dance the progressive left dance. Hakeem Jeffries in the same boat. Hakeem Jeffries has been an absolute awful minority leader in the House, by minority leader standpoints, by Democratic standpoints. And it's hard. And like I said, for all the times that I will shit on Nancy Pelosi, I've always given her credit as being a leader for her party, not necessarily because I like her politics, but just how she approached her party as the speaker. She kept the Democrats in line, and she kept most of them on the same page until the squad showed up. The squad is when you started seeing things go to shit. Hakeem Jeffries coming in after her looks even worse because they can't get their shit together either. The progressives are going to try to shut it down, but they're going to try to shut it down anyhow because they think it affects. And again, these shutdowns have nothing more to do with fundraising and talking points going into election season. That's the only reason they want to shut it down. It once again shows who they are. They could do a lot more if they actually try to negotiate. But when you come to a table as the minority party and you start just shooting for the moon and saying, if we don't get these things, we're going to shut down the government, why is anybody going to negotiate with you?
Yeah.
Why would they? The Democrats don't historically overly negotiate.
Their idea of negotiation is everything we want, nothing that you. I think Harry Reid said, we're willing to negotiate as long as we get what we want.
What was the last time we had a legitimate budget passed?
I can't remember.
Everything's been pushed through by an omnibus bill, right? And what happens with an omnibus bill? You get nothing but pork after pork after pork. And that's how they get people on board to vote. Well, if you throw all of this from my district and you put all this money towards this project and that project and the other things, then I'll vote with you on this. It's harder to do that with appropriations bills because they're broken down separately. It's like we talk about passing one bill at a time, right? We talk about that all the time. When you can't pass these bills that have 42 different things in it, which is what every border bill that the Democrats have put forward in the last 10 years has been, right? You do a standalone bill at a time. Appropriations are kind of like that. It makes it much more standalone. There's still a lot of stuff in there, yeah, but it's much more standalone. Those omnibus bills were so they could absolutely get people on board to try to, and it wasn't for the better of the government, it was for the better of that politician. It goes hand in hand with what we've been saying all night. It's all about emotions. And it's all about how they play the emotions of the voter to raise money.
Yep.
They said the illegals, these politicians don't give a frog's fat ass about them, right? They didn't. Just like the seditious six did not give a shit if there was some poor PFC, E2, E3, E4, E5, who got themselves in trouble because they thought they were getting a legal order and they refused to do it, and then they ended up getting charged under the UCMJ. All those politicians were going to do in that seditious six group, they were just going to go stand in front of whatever military base that the trial was at and talk about how, this can't happen again. And if you send me $500,000 this week and put me in office and vote me in again, then I'll make sure this never happens again.
Yep.
That's all they have right now, because look at you. Was it you that pointed out to me earlier today? They're potentially losing.
Oh, 2030, they're predicting that Democrats will lose 9 and the Republicans will gain 8, and that's just through the census alone.
That's on the Electoral College, right?
Yeah. And then Virginia's big gerrymandering attempt just got blocked by the courts.
Mhm.
And it's going to block it till after the midterms, so they're shut down. Supreme Court's getting ready to do an emergency case on California. They agreed to the emergency hearing on it, and they've given Democrats to I think like a week to respond.
Yeah, I thought it was 7 or 14 days.
Something like that. But
And then you also have the Voters' Right Act decision that's still sitting out there. And if
Yep.
the Voters' Right Act decision, if they repeal Section 3 of the Voters' Right Act, you're going to have a ton of seats turn red in the House alone. But that's why they're playing all these emotions right now, is because they're grasping at straws. Look, I've brought this up before, the 17th Amendment, and I bring this up to show you where but for the listeners to see kind of where the country is. If you didn't make the senators a direct election and they were appointed how they're supposed to be appointed, which is by state legislatures,
because they were representative of the federal government.
Of the state on the federal government level, right? Yeah, the state legislatures. That's how it was originally done. For the new listeners out there who maybe don't
That's why
know,
it's also for the House. That's why it's called the House, because they represent the people.
Representatives. Yeah, it's a pretty straightforward name. That was for the people to decide, and those two were supposed to be at loggerheads. They weren't supposed to necessarily work together. You had the senior house and the junior house. And what they were supposed to do is constantly keep each other in checks and balances. Well, when you turn around and you have the direct election of senators, you're now weighing on the emotion of the everyday voter and not necessarily the needs of a state. And a legislature who's putting the state's needs above the representatives, the people's needs, right? Our thing is to make sure that the state's taken care of. So we're going to vote on behalf of the state. If you brought that back and you look at the breakdown of this country, you would have almost 70 senators every election. It might fluctuate 68 red, 32 blue. But it would be a hardcore conservative Senate, and the Democrats would never, ever, ever have power in there. That's just a reality. That's just how it breaks down. And that's why they changed it. And they want to weigh on people's emotions because that's how they win. And that's how they've always won. And it has nothing to do with logic.
Nope. I think that's going to do.
You done?
Yeah.
Okay. Let's be done.
Well, we've gone an hour and 15, so we went into overtime.
We didn't plan on going that long anyhow. No. Folks, thank you so much for joining us this evening. That is Jersey Joe, the Reaver of Common Sense. You can find him every Monday and Friday here on SHR Media at 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 on the East Coast on Mondays and Fridays. I host the Edge of Liberty every Monday and Wednesday, 8 p.m. Pacific, 11 on the East Coast. Tuesday and Thursday mornings, you have Mission Ready Men with my friend Big E right here on SHR Media. And Tuesday and Thursday nights, normally in this spot right here, the big fat Santa Claus looking motherfucker, BZ's normally sitting in this seat, and he will be back hopefully Thursday. I really appreciate everyone who's jumped in. I really appreciate everybody who completely dislikes us but keeps our average viewing time up by hanging out in chat. Thank you so much for that. We will see you. I'll see you tomorrow night, 8 p.m. Pacific, right here. Have a good night.